Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
Imagine being the first person to ever send a payment over the internet. New things can be scary, and crypto is no different. It's new, but like the internet, it's also revolutionary. Making your first crypto trade feels easy with 24/7 support when you need it. Go to Kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures Inc. PVI DBA Kraken. Visit PVI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
What does an 18-year veteran of the tech industry and a 20-year veteran of the military have in common? More than you might think. Welcome, everyone, to the Second Act podcast, leveling up your life's journey.
You can't stop me. You don't got the power. Shut me down. That's not an option. I'm my biggest problem. You don't got the power. Shut me down. That's not an option. You can't stop me.
Hi, Michael. How you doing?
Hey, John. Good, man. How you doing?
I'm good. It's a great start to the week. I'm obviously dressed for success. If for those of you just listening and not watching, you're missing out because I usually don't show up so professional. But, we thought with this guest today, we got to step up our game because he's going to bring some gems. So
nice.
I threw on a collared shirt, fixed my hair, not wearing
no
a
hat today. Yeah.
Freshly shaved. I mean, it's a good day. When you start off like that, it's like, man, it can only get better.
Is this really John Ballinger is what I'm wondering right now? Or is this your doppelganger that's popped in here?
AI does some amazing things with images these days. No, man, it's a good day. I'm really excited for this opportunity to have our guest on, and maybe we can share also some additional things that we're doing. I don't know if this is the episode we do that, but if it is, I'll let you do that. I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, it's all of our thunder, including our guests here in the organization that we're super excited to be working more with. But before we get to that, I just want to announce it's been a little break since we shared our last recording. We took a little bit of a break just to get some things in order as we roll through the rest of the year with exciting guests, including today's guest. But we launched our MJ Pay It Forward initiative a handful of weeks back. We've got 4 winners now, and these are just random folks who went to whatisyoursecondAct.com, shared a couple of details, and
awesome.
Put their names in a hat, which we pulled out. And we're using some Excel wizardry to make it as random as possible, unbiased as possible, to get a person out of that list that we have and send them a e-gift card just because we want to pay it forward to someone, whether it be, Uber Eats or whether it be a Visa or Master gift card, just a little something to make your day. And hopefully, people take notice and do the same for others.
Very cool.
But those winners are Teresa, Carla, Andy, and Leslie so far. So congrats to all of you guys.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that you use wizardry. Because I pulled in, before the show we were talking about, I went on a road trip with my family last night. We pull in 11:45 into our driveway. And of course, my wife and I unpack the car while the kids are asleep in their chairs. And all of a sudden I wake up my oldest and he said, "Are we home?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "The car's already unpacked?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "When did we get home?" I said, "Oh, a couple minutes ago." He goes, "Man, you must be a wizard to get the car unpacked that fast." Well, those are dad
Wizardry.
skills. Those are dad skills, son. You'll
you
know
only
when
get wizardry when you're a dad.
when you turn 44, you learn some things. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
I don't want to belabor this anymore because we've got
let's get into it.
our guest for a limited amount of time, and I want to maximize as much as we can. But in this week's episode, we're joined by Ross Dickman. I met him in person a couple of years ago, but he is now the CEO of Hire Heroes USA, a leading nonprofit organization that helps connect the military veteran community with potential employers. Ross's military career spanned over a decade with the U.S. Army, where he served in a variety of leadership roles, including the position of executive officer at the Center for Professional Military Ethics before embarking on a career in the civilian sector. Ross's academic achievements include degrees from the United States Military Academy at West Point, Columbia University, and the University of Georgia. With a strong sense of service to others, Ross joined Hire Heroes USA in 2016 after retiring from the military and has been with the organization ever since. Now residing in Connecticut with his wife and daughter, Ross's deep-rooted family values continue to enrich his compassionate leadership style. Ross,
Awesome.
Well,
welcome to the show.
thanks,
man.
John. Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here. That was very colorful language. Probably did me a great service, but the truth's probably more mundane.
No,
Welcome.
no.
Welcome.
I had the pleasure of meeting you once, and I have used Hire Heroes, when I was transitioning out of the military. So I've known about your work in the background. And let me just first say that Michael and I are huge Hire Hero USA fans. We did our launch party, and then the first event we actually did was partnered up with Hire Heroes here in Colorado Springs and Denver area. And it just truly meant so much that your organization would help somebody like me and then turn around and help literally hundreds of thousands of other military members get their feet underneath them as they're transitioning out of the military. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your role, stepping into that, which we'll get into in a minute, but thank you for your leadership.
Thank you guys for the amazing support. I grew up in an Army family. My grandfather served in World War II. My brother is still in the Army. My brother's still in the Air Force, pardon me. Broad choice of service branch, but
Hopefully you pick on him relentlessly.
as much as humanly possible. But it's such a noble calling. It's such an important service to the nation, and such a unique service. Like you're doing a mission that is highly specialized and really important, and it takes work to then figure out, like, how do you fit in the rest of society? How do you reestablish that purpose? And it really depends so much on people like you and other corporate partners to recognize and understand that, to support that mission, because to make this dream of a democratic society and this dream of America work, it does count on this selfless service that people do to serve our country in any way. And everyone plays such an important role in helping them come back in and have that next opportunity after they did wear that mantle and wear that uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ross, in a past life, I learned just how important both education and employment are to the overall well-being of everyone, and, doing what's possible to create a fair future for all. And it's amazing to see some of the data behind your organization, and then the ways that they're helping transition not just the military veterans, but the spouses as well, the families, into a world that, is some ways a bit foreign to them. They spent their whole life, in this military community that's so different, especially if you don't have exposure to that, trying to sort of map what's going on there to the civilian side of what's happening is not the easiest of tasks. So I commend you and your organization for doing that stuff.
Yeah, there's, I sometimes say, I flew Apache helicopters, and I know John flew, and like the mission of the Apache, right? It's, it's a flying tank essentially and shoots missiles. But once you're done doing that,
it's pretty cool.
Not many companies need a helicopter that shoots missiles. Like, that's not, you have to get beneath that to really understand how someone's skills apply, like going through basic at West Point, and you're doing the hand grenade obstacle course and things like that, and trying to land a hand grenade in the pit. And it's like, that's such a unique skill. Like, I can land a hand grenade where it needs to go. And how does that help me with financial management of the firm? Like,
or that marketing job I want.
Exactly.
Ross, I want to first recognize that you just stepped into this role as CEO. It has been how many months have you been now CEO?
Oh, coming up on like 90 days. So nearing the 90 day mark.
90-day mark. Nice.
I love it. You know, I want to talk about that because stepping into that role is huge, right? You're leading this organization that's got so much attention on it and the spotlight, and you're reaching out to service members, you're helping them transition into corporate life and make a better way for themselves and, you know, get going. But then also you're probably trying to raise money and you're trying to get sponsorships and other things. So what is that like stepping in now 90 days in? What, walk us through that real quick.
Well, I think the one advantage is, I've been at the organization for a long time. So like, I know a lot of what makes it work. I've worked in all aspects of the company. And so I have a good sense of, the team, of the culture, of how work gets done. But really, I think the transition's hard, right? Like, changing your old role or changing a role in an organization, you can plan for it as much as you want, but ultimately you got to get dirty and down in the weeds and do the hard work of it. And that meant, like, one of the things that I had to recognize right away is the way I operated in the previous role when I was the chief operating officer and running the programming specifically, that wasn't going to work for me going forward. I have to change my work style. I have to adapt around the needs of this role. That means engaging with partners, reaching out to donors and talking about the mission, the strategy, and our vision going forward and our needs statement, being more forward-facing on the federal side, on the state level side with legislative actions and policy and the gaps that we're seeing around transition assistance programs. And, one, like, handwriting thank you notes to donors, to partners, to friends of the organization. Man, I don't know if you've handwritten a letter at any time in the last year, but that is a perishable skill. I guess I have no forearm strength anymore because I forgot how to do it. And I think that's one of the things is, like, you can get bogged down in, like, what got me somewhere in the past. Like, those are strengths of mine. And it's always good to reinvest in your strengths. And so you try to carry over styles that have made you successful in the past, but you got to adapt around the needs of the role. And that's really what I've been trying to focus on the last 90 days. Like, how do I position the organization for success? Means I've got to position myself to be using the best of my capabilities, the best of my intellect, the best of my energy and vision and passion, and set up the team around me and throughout the organization to maximize their capability set as well. So it's been a fun challenge, right? Good problems, as people say, but it's taking all of that depth of data and knowledge that I have in the past and just applying it in a kind of totally new direction.
Yeah, and I'm sure as the former chief operating officer of the organization, as an operator and probably someone who's high on execution and metrics and things to run the organization, that comes in handy when now you're communicating to all these stakeholders and laying out the vision and strategy and sort of invigorating both your internal employees, but people who want to get excited about your cause. And, the data around those things really, I think, help speak to, people understand the 30,000 foot view of what you're doing. And then when they donate money, they want to be like, okay, what's happening with that money in action? And that's where the data really starts to uncover how you're helping people transitioning out of the military, underrepresented groups for employment purposes, all these like really interesting dimensions that are of high importance nowadays, both when you're selling to Congress and then, donors around the world. So it's awesome mission. And I congratulate you on making that transition to the big seat.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Still got a lot to prove, still got a lot to make sure that we go out as a company and hit what we need to as a mission set. But one of the things that drives me is, every day new veterans, new spouses are signing up and saying, hey, I need help with employment. I'm either unemployed or underemployed, or I'm about to leave the military, or I left the military 15 years ago and the career path hasn't gone the way I wanted, and I need help to get it going the way that I need. And that just drives my energy level every day of, like, I can't sit and rest and, Well, wait for things to stabilize. Nothing stabilizes, right? The inevitability of the next problem is always going to jump up and bite you. So you've got to proceed forward and set intention and move. And I think that's what I've learned from the military and learned through coming up in life. And that's, I think, served me well in this to help kind of bring the team with me as we move forward.
Yeah. Russ, let's talk about why your organization exists and why it's so important. And I'll give my frame of reference. And what I believe is most people that go in the military go in after high school or college, and it's usually their first job. And whether they stay in for 4 years or 20 years, they don't know anything else. They don't know the civilian job market, and they have never really made themselves marketable to get, a job that they were really aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
So going to the military, spend 20 years like me, and then all of a sudden they get out and it's like, holy cow, I'm not really prepared for what's ahead of me. And there's some transition classes, which you kind of mentioned, there's a lot of gaps that don't fully prepare us. So therefore, in steps hire heroes to do what?
Yeah. I mean, you laid it out, the problem statement, like every year about 200,000 military members are leaving the service, and there's 18 million veterans roughly in the United States who are at various stages of, engaged in a career or making a change or whatever. And then military spouses who are either with a veteran or with an active duty or reserve or guard service member, and they all have career challenges and ambitions that need support as well. One of the things that we recognize is, first, employment is such an important cornerstone of setting purpose, of setting identity, of building a building block really for like not only health and wealth and wellness and purpose and value in your community. And it allows someone a chance to establish who they are again, and then take that into that next community, into that home, into that area that they live in, and be proud of who they are. And about 80% of service members, when they're leaving the transition assistance programming, don't have a job lined up. They haven't figured out what that's going to look like. So it's a huge problem statement. We found through both practical research and testing and iteration and measurement and tweaking is that one-on-one personalized coaching is a true difference maker in terms of having an advocate on your side, having someone who does have experience, who has helped people navigate career challenge, who's seen what it's like from on the recruiter side, from operating industry side, knows how to get someone through all the traps and barriers and through the ways that hiring is done. And just having someone to talk to about that specific problem set and work with an expert to tackle each of those things. That has made such a difference in the lives of the veterans and spouses that we serve. And so we have gone kind of full bore on that as our model. It's like one-on-one, personalized, as personalized as it can get, every aspect of the coaching process and connection to resources. But then taking a process mindset around that and saying, how do you then take a personalized coaching model and scale it to serve the needs statement, which, we haven't met that yet, but we're continually growing to try to meet that needs statement.
Yeah.
The work you put into practice and having the one-on-one connection, I've come to appreciate the term battle buddy through my friends in the military, either active duty or retired. And it's almost like you are assigning a battle buddy in this transition process to help those in need find employment outside of the military sphere. And, anytime you can build one-on-one connection like that and really try to understand, what drives a person and try to match that drive with something meaningful and purposeful in their life is sort of a magic combination. So it's really awesome what you guys are working through and how you've differentiated yourself, Ross, maybe from other organizations in that way.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, we think it's the secret sauce, right? Like there are a ton of great tools and programs and amazing companies that have onboarding systems or connection systems for like internship models and things like that. And those are all amazing and they can help overcome barriers, but it starts at the person, right? It starts with that person having honest conversations with themselves, which can be hard to do if you don't have guidance and support. You look yourself in the mirror all the time, but like I looked myself in the mirror for a long time and thought like, my hairline is not receding. It looks amazing. I should hang on to this. I should grow it out. Yeah, you need that trusted advocate that can tell you sometimes hard truths or supporting statements or whatever. And so, it's something to add rigor and quality and care to that reflection that allows someone to then be bold and be brave and be confident as they take that step and really do pursue their next purpose.
And I'm going to guess, Ross, since you're the CEO of Hire Heroes, your transition out of the military into your first corporate job was so smooth.
Oh, yeah.
Because you wouldn't be leading an organization like this if it wasn't smooth, right?
Yeah, it was so good. I never had the sweat of desperation on me in interviews. I think I bombed an interview once for a manufacturing organization. So I struggled to figure out what to do leaving the Army. I had flown helicopters and I just couldn't really do that anymore. I had worked at West Point and done character education and things like that with cadets. And there's not really many roles out there that allow you to do that kind of stuff. And I just was kind of grabbing onto anything I could and trying to pretend that that was the thing that motivated me. And a couple of people tell me that in interviews and say like, it feels like you're interviewing for this because you feel like you need to and not because you're actually excited about this work. And that's a hard one to hear. There was one where someone was like, well, here's where we have locations and, would you be comfortable moving? And tried to bring levity to it and said, the Army had me living in Alabama for a long time, so I can make anywhere work. And the interviewer's like, I'm from Alabama. And I was like, it's great. I loved it. Didn't get a call back. I was starting from like, I needed to put food on the table, which is like a totally value. Like there is nothing wrong with that. People are stuck in circumstances. Sometimes people have to leave the military in a very tight turnaround, or there are other challenges that happen. You've got to make ends meet. That can work for a time, but if you don't start with what drives you, you're gonna that opportunity will have a half-life, and it will creep up, and it will accelerate towards that where you're feeling like I just punching in a clock, and nothing motivates me, and you can slip into depression. You can feel a lot of anxiety around that. So we tried to start with that conversation with you, but it took me a long time. I didn't know about Hire Heroes when I was leaving, so it took a trusted mentor in the Army, a boss of mine, he like sat me down and it was like, hey, you seem like you're struggling on this. And like, he just was really good he didn't know anything about the employment marketplace or anything like that, but he was just very good about one of those inquisitor type of questioning leaders and just digging at each level of surface that I was providing him about like, well, what do I want to do? Something with meaning. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And getting to that core of like, I want to apply my background in a little bit of research and a little bit of human psychology to make meaningful difference in the communities that matter to me. Care about Pennsylvania, being kind of like ostensibly from there as a military brat. I care about military connected issues. I care about animal-connected issues. I care about children's welfare and education access. And he's like, well, let's start going into that. Let's start, pulling that together. And that then led me to an opportunity at Hire Heroes to do some really interesting research around disabled veterans opportunities. That was pivotal for me. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, our whole show is about the second act, and John and I have gone through this journey in different ways, but I think the process of like self-reflection and self-actualization and really finding what's important to you, what excites you, what's going to get you up in the morning, especially when things are going crazy. It's a Saturday or Sunday or late one night and, you know, you got to get to it. I hope you're excited about what that is. Otherwise, it's going to feel like forever. And we don't want anybody to be in that position. But you do need to take that pause and do that reflection. There's a lot of great books out there and articles and things just talking about how to sort of think about life in that way, especially if you're trying something significantly different. And again, coming back to how you differentiate and matching one-on-one with someone as, you know, a form of a battle buddy to like not tell you everything you want to hear, but be there to support you in the process objectively, I think is really important.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who's gotten to like a level of success without someone telling them the thing that they needed, but they didn't want to hear. And I'm sure, you know, John probably has plenty of stories about that from the Marines where he heard stuff that he needed to hear that made the unit function better, but sometimes that's hard to hear.
Yeah.
It can be tough to hear hard truths.
Imagine being the first person to ever send a payment over the internet. New things can be scary, and crypto is no different. It's new, but like the internet, it's also revolutionary. Making your first crypto trade feels easy with 24/7 support when you need it. Go to Kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures Inc. PVI DBA Kraken. Visit PVI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
You know, Ross, my transition out of the military, when I first got out, I thought, you know, I'm going to be this entrepreneur. I'm going to do all these things and start all these projects. And I did. And then 6 months later, I'm like, none of these things are really taking off. I should probably do exactly what we talked about earlier, figure out something to put some food on the table. And I remember going to this interview, and it was a recruiter found it for me. He said, this is perfect for you. It's here in Colorado. You know, it's right up your alley. The pay was actually really good. And I went to the interview. I won't mention the product, but I didn't really believe in it. But I thought, you know what? Helicopter pilot, I'd figure it out. I'll do anything. And I go in for the interview, and this guy's like, okay, tell me about your background. And I'm, you know, talking about military and all this. He goes, tell me about your sales experience. I'm like, I got none, but I flew helicopters. And he goes, what makes you want to sell this product? Because kind of specific, and you know, you're gonna have to know about it a little bit. And I'm like, man, the pay's great, travels, you know, okay, but you know, I can do anything. I was in the Marine Corps and I flew helicopters. And he sat me down at the end of the interview and he goes, listen, man, you know, I'm sure you are probably at this place where you know, need to make some money, but we can tell in the interview that your passion's not there for this product. So either figure out if you truly want to do sales and convert, or figure out what you truly love and go do that. And man, I'll tell you, I drove home and it was like, I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't call anybody. It was like, what do I really want to do? And, you know, fast forward a year, I'm back in sales with something that I truly love, you know, and that's aircraft. But that hard truth is sometimes what the military member needs when they're coming out of, you know, 4 years or 20 years of service where they've been doing this thing that they really love, but it doesn't convert to the civilian sector. And they're like, well, but I was in the Army, or I was in the Marine Corps and I did this, or I was a SEAL, or I was a helicopter pilot. So I'm probably pretty good at it. Well, that doesn't always convert. And employees see through that. And sometimes our skills in the military aren't just convertible skills in the civilian sector. And so therefore we need Hire Heroes USA, or we need another organization to set us down or help rein in our resume or help rein in what we're actually interested in, because we just have never had to think like that before. And that's where it's so vital, so vital. And I love telling my story because, you know, I thought I could do anything. And I had this true fall from grace. I actually was talking to my son this morning. I was like, listen, you're going to need friends around your life, because I went from flying helicopters for the president to waking up the next day with not even knowing what I was going to put on for clothes. And if I didn't have friends that helped rein me in and organizations that help do that for me, the process is either really, really long or you just don't recover. So,
and that whole,
but you got to give the military some credit, John, because the things that are portable are grit and ownership and humility and leadership. Really important characteristics, I think, for any human being. But like you said, when you're flying a helicopter with the president in the back seat, and now you're sort of not involved at all in anything, it's a shock to the system.
Yeah.
And it took you 15-ish years to get to the point where you were able to have that prestigious role.
Yeah.
And so now, knowing that you can do something big like that, and then going back to the starting line, I think it's the hard mental transition to make. And now you got to sort of travel that road again in a different way.
Well, but here's where Ross and Hire Heroes makes a difference, because you're right. A lot of those skills that you earn and learn in the military don't convert into a resume right away. And we think it does. We think it should. We think we should be able to say, hey, I was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps and I commanded all these troops and I did all this stuff and I, flew these missions. But sometimes it doesn't show up on a resume. And when we get into that interview, we get our legs chopped out from under us, or we don't get a call back, or we get hey, thanks, but no thanks. And that's where we need those people to come along the side of us, those resume battle buddies or those corporate battle buddies to come along and say, hey, let me put my arm around your neck. Let me show you the skills that you have and how they convert into the civilian sector. Let's get granular so that you can crush that resume or that interview, and then you can show those soft skills in the position that you earned.
Like Don, you said it too, like that. Like I could do anything. The military is great at rotating you through role and function and testing and really expanding someone's capability skill set, right? Like the Swiss Army knife approach, where you're not super deep in one area only, but you're breadth of capability set. And it's such powerful strength and can be a huge weight on someone in the interview or in representation of their skills, because on a resume, how many people do you meet out in the corporate world who changed role function all the time? They moved from sales to then they were in logistics, then they moved to ops, then they were in finance, then they were leading a marketing unit, then they went back to doing ops again. And it's like, hey, you got to figure out what you're good at over here, But the military, that's a normal transition of you move through leadership and staff roles, and you did broadening assignments. And so it's not that we're whitewashing out what they did in the military, but you've got to take that and pivot how it's presented in a way that leverages that strength in a way that the corporate partner recognizes it. That I can do anything approach is really a demonstration of your learning agility. It's and as you look at all the role functions you filled, is getting to that granular skills-based level to say, okay, well, where did these skills actually fit in that? But it does start at articulating the skills around that next purpose. I try to, when I'm coaching someone individually, I try to have them go through exercises thinking what did I really enjoy doing in the military? And what was I really uniquely good at in the military? And then we look at where those overlaps are and go deep into, well, in this role, you really like doing this and you were really good at it. Why? What about it? What stood out to you in that? Give me some vignettes. Tell me some anecdotes. And then pulling from there to say, now that tells the story about where you probably would have that passion and intensity that could be so valuable. Now we need to aim that at where it fits in the corporate marketplace.
It's just like in coaching, when you get that person who says, I want to be better, or I want to make more money, or I want to have more time. And you say, great, what does that look like to you? Let's start with that. What does, being more successful look like? Is that a new title? Is that and you just start digging down on the whys or what's, right? If you had more time, like you said you wanted, what would you do at that time? And the answer that you get is then another what question. Well, okay, what does more time look like? Is that 30 minutes or is that 4 days? Can you work for 2 days or 3 days and call it good? And I think what you're doing is a super powerful exercise. Because if you asked me 2.5 years ago, what do you like? And I'm like, well, I love flying and I love being a Marine and I love being around other Marines and I love deploying and doing this cool stuff. But okay, let's figure out, what really is the purpose or what is really the thing behind all that. I love having, a strategy before I go into, a brief or I go into a flight. I love having those executable things that I can kind of mentally tick off and say, yep, just accomplished that. Yep, just did that. Yep, we're here. And then you land and you say, okay, now let's debrief and let's figure out how to be better next time. I love that process. So I had to find something where I could apply that process to my life now. And I think that's what you're doing. You're just helping, like you said, put those words and those feelings towards what somebody's been doing for the last, umpteen years of their military career. Tell me what excites you about being a sailor in the Navy. Yeah. What is it that you just have loved for the past, X amount of years? Let's find something that carries over.
If you ask people too, like what's at the core of their identity, when you're in the military, it's, you're not like, you have an individual identity and a group identity that's really has strong culture. It's very interwoven. You ask people, it's part of the core of their identities. I'm a Marine, a sailor, I'm in the Army, that sustains out. And as they're leaving, often what comes into play then is like the other parts of their identity. Enjoy being a father, enjoy being a mother, I have a good son, whatever else. And employment's tricky in that those are really noble and that's amazing, but you have to be able to answer that identity question from a it sounds bad, but like a self-centered perspective. Like John, like you just did, like I like to have a strategy and a briefing, execute on those, AAR, use that to implement, right? Like that's a core part of what makes you function and operate. It probably feeds into like you're telling the story about unpacking the car and being a wizard at that, right? Like that stuff feeds into how you operate in the day-to-day through everything. But it's harder to get to that rich detail, but that gives someone so much power when they're interviewing because they can articulate really what makes them uniquely valuable in any role.
Yeah, because regardless of what it is, if you get the sense that they're passionate about a particular thing, you can start to peel back the onion and ask some questions and really understand how they think about the world and how they think about a process and how they would think about a job role. And understanding someone's thinking along with their other characteristics help you understand what kind of employee is going to be hired and if they're a good fit for this function. And I know... in my own personal hiring experience, I tend to lean into more of what someone's capable of doing versus, deep domain expertise in a particular area because certain skills can be learned. It's like, do they have the personal characteristics and the drive to be able to figure it out and push forward, work as a team, get things done?
Like I tell people all the time, I'm a role is taken, not role is given type of thinker. Like, not that it's a binary, but like I tend to be where a lot of that comes from like a violence of action type of training from the Army, like meet the moment, drive in and be assertive. And so I always try to frame myself that way. If there's a gap of space around what we're doing or whatever, like expect to see me leaning into that, if not like kicking in a door and driving into that space aggressively. Like I like if there is a place that we should be looking to grow as a person or as an organization, I'm pushing into that space, not waiting to be told to go there. Yep.
I mean, that's a good transition, Ross. And what are you super excited about with Hire Heroes this year and in the coming months and years?
I mean, it's exciting time. Obviously, like there's a lot of areas that we've learned about where some veterans are, not performing as well and not given as many opportunities as other veterans and other military spouses. And so we we're continuing to try and drive towards how can we rectify that and get quality, equitable outcomes for all veterans, regardless of the experiences they've had. So, we are spending a lot of time trying to unpack some of the challenges that rural veterans are encountering around accessibility to roles, accessibility to support services, and what does that look like. Our Women Veterans program is continuing to grow based on some of the need statements we've seen around women veterans having longer unemployed durations, longer times it's taking them to get hired, lower salary, even when you control for like rank and role type that they're going into. We really are paying a close attention to homeless veterans reintegration as well. We're not a group that can solve access to housing or access to food insecurity types of challenges, but we do have a process model for employment that works. So we're creating community-based partnerships around that work to be like work with other subject matter experts who are doing those specialized care needs to everybody work together to lift up that veteran in need. And then, I think like we were a solution designed around the highest quality, highest level of care you could provide at an individual level, and then tried to scale it up. That takes time, that takes money, you have to have patience and a drive to continue to create revenue. On the federal side, like they have a challenge statement of 200,000 leaving every year, and it's really hard to address that gap. And, you have something like 12 different federal agencies that have some part of helping to manage transition assistance and the way that's delivered and access to services. The big three are, the Department of Defense, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. And so part of that is being great partners with those three agencies and the other supporting agencies by helping to figure out like how can we integrate a care model that doesn't have someone fall through the gaps, and that, John, when you were a battalion commander, like, you had a Marine leaving the service, how do you make sure they're getting the right care at the right sequence and timing, the right thing at the right time? So we want to keep collaborating with those federal partners to create opportunities to get the right care to the right person at the right time.
Kind of a silly question, Ross, but so 12 federal agencies, is there like a liaison or some master orchestrator who sort of helps bring it all together and work with, organizations like yours, or is it, a little more fragmented?
It's a little fragmented. They do have a great, they have a leadership commission or something like that where, leaders of that across those entities get together and they talk about what's happening in each of their departments. And, it's a tough job too, right? Like, one of the things that I use the VA for all of my healthcare and everything. And one of the things I always find is like, I'm always encountering great people who really care about what they're trying to do and are driven to really actually try and do the best they can. And at times they encounter a system or a process or a policy that makes it hard for them to do what they want to try and do to support like that veteran who's coming in for care. And I try to keep that in my mind always when I'm looking at like, well, where does the federal stuff need support? It's like, it's people who are trying their best and they're trying to navigate through a bunch of tough barriers and over hurdles and everything else to align care. And like a unit commander in the military has one set of problems and is serving one mission type. That's, securing the nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that service member in their unit is filling a role that's essential. And the VA has a different mission of caring for them and, trying to meet that standard that President Lincoln laid out in his address around like the quality of care that we owe for their sacrifice. At times there's friction from that. At times it's working in collaboration. It is about just trying to help understand. Everyone's coming to that table with the best intentions. And how do we align process around that to smooth out those challenges?
Yeah. I don't imagine it's a simple problem. I just, I think you helped me appreciate the challenges and complexities a little more by sharing that. So thank you.
Yeah.
And just one follow-up question, John, if you don't mind me, just my last one for Ross is on this topic. You mentioned 200,000 retiring veterans each year. Has that trend been kind of flat? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Like how is the sort of top of the funnel of those folks who need jobs outside of the military changing?
It's been it's somewhat declined over the last like 10 years or so. It was about 240,000 a year that were leaving the military. And that was everything from retiring to medically separating, or they finished their enlistment, or they were being discharged, or like other reasons. That has started to trend down as the overall like force size is not as large as it was kind of during the height of the wars. Economic conditions do have a factor on that too. Like, in 2020, in the COVID year, the number was a little bit less as people who had flexibility on their separation date. If they were making a choice around it, they're maybe staying in where it was a little more stable and waiting to see. I think it'll continue to trend down a little bit. I think that both the DoD is driven to try and retain talent as best as it can. The military's struggling, I think, to fill their recruiting quotas, which we'll see that effect throughout the entire funnel. Hopefully, there will be changes in that. We'll be able to meet the force projection needs and get enough people volunteering to serve to meet the mission that the DoD has. But I think that number will continue to decline, although little by little over the next few years as we go through some of this challenge of like, what does the size of the military need to look like, and what roles and mission sets are they solving across the globe?
Yeah. Interesting.
And Ross, I think it's important to mention, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but not only are there 200,000+ service members leaving the military on a annual basis, but you also have capacity to support the spouses as well.
Yeah.
Talk through that for just a second.
Yeah, military spouses have their own unique challenge on that, right? If they, it's funny. It's a really inclusive term, military spouses, but there's so many identities within that. When they met their partner who either was active in the military or in the Guard, or if they met and married someone who was an already separated veteran, like they encounter this military and veteran ecosystem in unique ways, and it changes their career trajectory. If you met your partner after they got out of the military and they had some challenges and conditions that required VA care, that's going to bleed into their spouse, like having to learn how to help them navigate VA healthcare and maybe take them to appointments or maybe not, or whatever else. And that can affect career mobility. That can affect promotion and upward mobility. If they meet someone, marry their high school sweetheart and stick with them through a military career. I don't know, John, how many times did you PCS over a career in the Marines?
13 times.
13 times. Like, you see someone with 13 role changes on their resume and you go like, well, you haven't figured out anything about what you want to be, right? Like, it's a big problem in that, some jobs are portable, some aren't. Some jobs, some organizations aren't accessible to military spouses because they know, like Colorado Springs is a very dense military community and population. But some employers there might go, well, if you're a military spouse, you're probably out of here in 18 months, and I'd love to not have to post a new role, hire again, train up someone. By the time they're operating at where I need, they're leaving, and I got to do this process all over again. They need someone that can stay for 5 years so that it makes sense on the balance sheet for them. So it is about, for us, like both the coaching process, but also the employer connection side to help find those pathways where, how can you build portability in jobs? How can you address policy challenges around, if someone's a educated and certified school teacher in one state, how do we make sure there's interoperability for their licensure when they move to a new state because of their partner's military career?
Yeah, and if from an outsider, it's just looking surface level. If you're seeing, like you said, Ross, 6 to 12 months or a little bit longer, moving all the time and changing jobs, that looks maybe in some cases a little like unstable. But if they don't have the full story, but at the same time, So if I'm the spouse who is not a military member and doing my own, again, self-reflection, I'm like, who am I? Like, I've had all these different jobs and all these different places. Like, I've lost my identity. Like you said, trying to find your identity. And that's, maybe it's not talked about enough, but I know some of your data shows that you guys really support that segment of the military families as well. So that's another, I think, a more important thing to stress with Hire Heroes.
Yeah, we personally supported about 1,200 military spouses last year, and continue to grow that through that same one-on-one care model. We, their needs are very unique, so we have a specialized care team that's run by military spouses within the organization that does focus on that community care and the one-on-one coaching for them to meet their needs. But yeah, that identity part is really tough,
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our society too, what you do, is such a cornerstone of how we interact with each other in America. I don't talk to people on planes. I'm super antisocial on planes. But
my headphones go
right
on pretty
away.
quickly.
I mean, before I'm on the plane.
You're that guy that I'm trying to talk to.
Please do not talk
John's
to
trying
me.
to have a conversation.
Like tapping you on the shoulder, and you won't even look over at me.
Oh man, all right. And it's like, and what do you do? Is like, it's up there in the first three sentences you're going to ask someone.
Oh, for sure.
And I think about that a lot when I think about someone who is struggling to figure out that next step. How they answer that question is almost like speaking an intention into the world around what their next phase is going to look like. And we really want to empower them to have confidence to speak the intention of fulfilling that purpose. When John bothers you on a plane or something like that, that you can really speak that intention of who you are after that military experience.
Yeah.
I think some of the swag John wears draws attention to conversation. I've seen him rock some of his old military swag. It's pretty cool stuff. I would ask him a question or two, and I'm not one to start conversations.
Well, man, Ross, that is, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, for me, for 20 years, sitting on a plane, somebody turns to me and says, "Hey, what do you do?" I'm a Marine. Done.
Yep.
One word, 2 words. And I felt complete, joy out of just saying that. I'm a Marine. Oh, what do you do in the Marine Corps? Oh, I'm a helicopter pilot. But when I left, people were like, "What do you do?" Oh, I was a Marine, or I'm a former Marine, and I'm trying to figure out what the next thing is. It's like, it's a lot longer story, and it starts drawing out, and it's not as easy to find, the satisfaction in giving that response. And I'm sure that's a lot of people experience that. I know a lot of, service members experience that. And so that's where it's helpful to have those hard conversations.
Yeah, it's tough, right? It can affect your confidence if someone's, well, I was, and now I'm trying to figure out the next thing you're like, I'm doubting myself as I'm saying this. Like, you start at the core, like, even if you were in that next transition afterwards, or, looking to make a move, like, hey, I work in social impact, drive economic opportunity for disadvantaged groups. Like, that's what motivates me. Like, I go more specific usually, but like, if someone can get to what motivates them and drives them, then even if they are struggling on what they're doing in that moment, what job they're doing, what's their compensation at that point in time, they can still come to a root of who they are and speak it with confidence.
Sure.
That's awesome. Now, Ross, we're getting close to our time here, and we always like to ask our guests what kind of practical advice or insights they want to leave for our audience when they're contemplating or getting started in their second act, which I think you and your organization are uniquely positioned to share some wisdom around. But if you have a particular piece of advice you would like to leave our folks with, we'd love to hear it.
I mean, I'd say I talk to a lot of veterans, and so my advice is coming from that, and it's okay to put yourself first. the military is such a selfless, service-oriented organization, and that calling to serve leads into who we are afterwards. And you see it over and over again that they want to make impact, they care, they volunteer, they're so giving of all of their time and capabilities, and it's amazing. But when they're trying to figure out what's next, family pressure, money pressure, all that stuff starts to feed in. You've got to put yourself first for a moment in thinking through that. And that's okay. It's right. It's the right thing to do, is to think about it from your perspective first, of like, what motivates, what drives, where am I uniquely good? When I do this, I feel fulfilled. I deliver my best value in this way. That helps you then answer those next questions of, how do I put food on the table for the family? How do I make sure that I am living in my purpose? How can I make sure I'm there present for my kid's soccer game or for this school recital or whatever? It starts from putting yourself first for that exploration. And so, it's okay. It's okay to do that. Don't feel guilty about being selfish and enabling yourself to live your full purpose.
Love it.
Yeah. And something you said earlier, violent action. That's
not physically
violent.
Yeah. Violent,
mentally violent.
Yeah. Well, violent action in putting a process in front of you so that you can step out, and you can step out with intensity. That's what I love. That's what I love about what you guys are doing, because you're giving service members who have given their life to their country, who are now looking at what they do outside of the military, who may not have direction. You're giving them a roadmap that gets them to take violent action, gets them to take action, to step into that interview or step in front of that employer, to be confident in who they are in their service and the time they spent in uniform, to step in front of that organization and say, this is who I am and this is what I can provide for you. Like we've talked about before, the service instills those, some really cool and important traits and soft traits that don't always come out, and maybe not come out in the interview in those 15 minutes you have in front of a employer. But you help refine those skills so that they can come out, so that people walking into that interview can feel confident about the jobs they're applying for, and really the change they're going to make within an organization. And for that, I think it's so cool what you guys are doing, because you're instilling confidence back into people who are already confident. They just need a little bit of a boost. So
be proud of your story. I mean, it was a mission-oriented, like you said, selfless journey, Ross. And I think people should be proud of their story. In this noisy world, you've got to be able to sell yourself a little bit, because who else is going to do it? But do it in a way that works for you.
Well said, Michael.
Ross, man, thank you so much for being on the episode. For sharing your story with our audience, and the service-based journey you are on with helping our military veteran families to find employment after the service, for the support you showed me, and your organization showed me for the last 2 years, giving me my confidence back to help me get feet underneath me and step out. So thank you for all three of those things. And we just really appreciate your time. And for listeners who are interested in learning more about Hire Heroes USA, or you yourself, give us some of those links that we can provide in the show notes to connect.
Well, first, thank you both so much for the chance to come on and chat with you guys and share a little bit about my journey and learn about more about your journey, John, and kind of tell people about the important work we're doing. You can go to www.hireheroesusa.org, or on any of the social channels, Hire Heroes USA. We are a 501c3, so no veteran or military spouse, they pay nothing for the support that we provide, the one-on-one coaching, the connections, all of that It's totally free of charge to them. We operate predominantly off donations and support. And so any support you can give, whether it's volunteering your time, $5 a month, whatever, to help make this mission happen, we truly appreciate.
Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
And real quick, Michael, if you would just, maybe this is the place to just share about the partnership that we have with Hire Heroes now.
Yeah, we're super proud to be working with you guys and working with you even more closely the rest of this year. Ross, you have an amazing team, and we're going to be sharing some of our revenue proceeds with you guys in support of your organization and helping veterans and their families get jobs. We'll do the best we can to raise as much as possible, but I know even just one job makes a difference. So
absolutely,
it's a real honor.
You guys are amazing, amazing people, amazing servants, and caring for your communities, caring for veterans. Like this is, so I was saying, right, like that selflessness, that care and drive, like both of you are embodying it so much, and so we really appreciate that partnership as well. It's making a huge difference for those veterans and military spouses in need. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Well, Ross, thanks again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ross.
And man, what a phenomenal episode. CEO of Hire Heroes USA. Michael, I look forward to, this was a phenomenal episode. I look forward to the next episodes that we record, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Sounds good.
So,
all right. Thanks, Ross. Thanks, John.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks,
see you guys.
Listeners. We'll see you.
Take care.
Yep.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballinger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act with Michael and John on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.